I wasn't gonna do this originally. Even when I knew Nemesis was doing his own version of this, I never intended to release one on the same day as him. But then I realised I had enough to say about these tracks, so sure, why not? This will be a ranking of the 8 tracks released so far for Death Battle's 8th season, and this is all going to be very subjective. Well, I mean, all of my videos are my own subjective opinion. If you're ever looking for an objective analysis on how good stuff is instead of me just talking about what I do and don't like, then you are not in the right place. And this applies to music especially, since it is by far one of the most subjective tastes a person can have. It's also just not something I have any idea how to criticise in terms of composition and such. I know jack shit about musical terms and theory, and if I had to identify a genre or a single instrument in most of these tracks, I would probably fall over and cry. So this is going to come down to how much I like the tracks both on their own and as a part of the episodes they're from, in how they sync up to the battle, how they fit the characters, you know, that kind of stuff. The quality of the episodes themselves will play pretty much no part in where these rank. The closest you'll get is if listening to a bit of the track reminds me of a certain moment in the animation, and that's about it. Oh yeah, and like I mentioned before, Nemesis made his own version of this list. So if you don't like mine, then maybe your taste will align more with his, who knows. Alright, on with the list.
Yawn.
Alright guys, get ready for this groundbreaking revelation, right? I think something from Lex Luthor vs. Doctor Doom is just okay. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Apex of Doom. It does what it needs to, I guess. It's really atmospheric and has some well-paced pauses to let the cool moments sink in during the animation. And honestly, I don't dislike listening to it. I think it has a nice, almost robotic and industrial sound to it, which fits Lex and Doom incredibly well. Unfortunately, I think the track fits Lex vs. Doom a bit too well, because much like the rest of this episode, I find it boring as sin. Not bad, some people I've seen talk about the episode still don't seem to understand what I mean by it's alright, not good or bad. But it's so monotonous and it never picks up to any meaningful extent. It stays the same level of intensity for the action and the exposition dumps. The track's about as lively as a fucking funeral, which probably fits these characters, I guess. I don't associate either of them with being super high octane, but I would have also hoped for something more exciting than this really low-key track. I compared it to American Phantom in my ranking of the actual episodes this season, because I see them both as examples of songs that just never start. They have really nice beginnings and then just roll with that for the next 3 to 4 minutes. It's fine, I guess, but it's my least favourite track of the season by a landslide. Everything else from here on out I really like at the bare minimum. Man, it feels dirty putting Final Breath this low. I like it, I really do, but as someone who hasn't played Final Fantasy or Zelda games or listened to their soundtracks, this one just doesn't connect with me as much. I can't outright call any of it bad. In fact, outside of the weird pauses that need to be there for the sake of syncing up to the battle, I really enjoy listening to most of it. I just don't love it as much as other people. The ending though, the ending is great. Everything from Link playing the ocarina onwards is excellent. And yet somehow when I first listened to the track I missed the ocarina bit completely and thought they added it in post. I'm really not sure how. Anyway, I love the chanting in the background of the Fierce Deity portion of the battle, and I love how the Final Fantasy side of the track comes back in full swing for Cloud to take his victory. Actually, that is the one big issue I have with the track. It feels pretty Cloud-centric. It starts with a theme from his game and ends in the same way. I don't know, it just feels weird to me. I don't have much more to say on this one. It's really good and I get why people love it, it just isn't one that speaks to me in any way. But I had the same take on Thundershroud to begin with, so who knows, maybe it'll grow on me more over time.
Shut up!
Boy oh boy do I love the chorus of Chaos Unraveled. I love the general sound of it and Yates' vocals during it are incredible. I love how it uses the pauses to give breathing room before coming back in full swing. And it makes moments like the Chaos Control neck kick and the 2 Superform transformations have a ton of impact. These are moments that really stick with me and it's all thanks to this track's phenomenal chorus. The rest of it's fine. I'm not into how it leans into the lol edgy side of this matchup, especially not with lines like "I'll fight like the fucking devil wishes it could." That just comes across to me as overly tryhardy. The ending suffers from the same issue. I'm really not into the guttural vocals at the end. They don't feel like they fit with the rest of the song to me. Honestly, every time I re-listen to the song, I rewind the chorus like 20 times, and then I switch to a different song when it starts to wind down for the alumni mode Scissor Blades. It also has some pauses that are really weird when listening to it on its own that go on for maybe a little too long. I know they have to be that long for the sake of the battle, but like, editing's a thing? They could have definitely been shorter in the song's standalone release. I don't want to get across the idea that I dislike the song or think it's aggressively mid like Apex of Doom, because it isn't. If that's how I felt about it, it would not have placed above Final Breath. I really, really like it. I only really dislike one portion at the end and one lyric from the rest of it. But the chorus does have to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and the rest of it's just decent to me. Though I do really like that it managed to include both the lines, "all of me and lose your way," without them feeling shoved in for the sake of necessity. Including those lyrics only feels right for a track between these two. Stars of the Universe isn't something I re-listen to particularly often, and whenever I do, I always skip the opening 30 seconds and the last 10. The opening's good for setting the atmosphere before the fight, but on its own I'm not terribly interested in listening to it for an entire half minute. And the ending after Steven dies is just 10 seconds of it petering out before one last bit right before it finishes. The rest of this track is great though. It has a very weird sound to it, and I mean that in the best possible way. If this episode sold me on anything, it was Star being weird and quirky. So a track like this absolutely fits her and more than makes up for me having not seen the show and being unable to identify any musical references to it. And on Steven's end, there are some parts of his OST that I do notice in there, like the theme song. It's nice. The music has this really high level of energy for most of the fight, fitting the more cartoony nature of these two at the start and then having some really dramatic and intense moments near the end, like with the Warnicorn Stampede, the death, and the transformation scenes. And while I think Steven's transformation was better as a whole thanks to Kaiden's line delivery, Star got the better bit of the track for her butterfly transformation, I think. I really like how this builds up to a complete tonal shift for the rest of the battle, since the gory massacre between the Warnicorns and the Watermelon Stevens really wouldn't benefit from a cheery and upbeat track like what the start had. I think about my only other issue is the pause after the tidal wave, since it just sounds weird when the track is taken on its own, but I guess it needed to slow down to fit with the scenes, so I can't fault it too much, I guess. I love this track, just not enough for it to crack the top half.
Ryu is a dumpling!
Dragons and Dumplings, as funny as the name is to me, is a really good track. I think the other track I can best compare it to is Goodbye Chimichanga from Deadpool vs. The Mask. Both have a lot of huge tonal shifts and some pauses that sound weird when listening to them as songs on their own, but when coupled with the battles they're attached to, they complement every scene so well. This genuinely sounds like something you'd find in a film score, which is definitely a good thing, though it still doesn't give me much incentive to listen to it on its own. Honestly, I think this could have been better if it was split into maybe 3 mini-tracks for each segment of the fight. The first one at the start, the second for the staff battle up until the Spirit Realm, and then the last one from then on out. I'd happily go back to the third one over and over because it's amazing. The way it gets really dramatic for Iron Fist's 1-inch punch, the incorporation of the Kung Fu Panda theme as Po summons his Chi Dragon, and the way it works in the song from Po's battle with Kai, this ending's just so amazing. The rest of it's good as well. It has this really upbeat and whimsical sound to it, which makes perfect sense. This is just a sparring match to these two. It doesn't need to be super intense until they start giving it their all at the end. I like how it syncs up to a lot of the action, like Po's failed whooshy fingerhold attempts and the bit at the start where Danny uppercuts him after using his hypnosis. Though that can also work against it at times. There are a bunch of pauses that are necessary for the scenes they're a part of, but when listening to the track on its own, it can feel a little weird with the constant stopping and starting, as well as all the dead air. I love this as a backing track for the excellent fight scene, but I think rewatching that fight scene's probably going to be the only way I re-listen to this track from now on.
Get ready to feel the thunder!
I don't shy away from how I am not a fan of Blake vs. Mikasa at all, but holy shit does the track slap. I still cannot believe that I initially thought, yeah, this is just pretty good, I guess, when I first did my review of the episode, because this track is fucking amazing. My only issues with it are really minor. I think there's a small handful of line deliveries I'm not super into, and let me stress, a very small handful. Whenever they start singing about blood, the first one always sounds a little off to me, and I can't put my finger on why. And the first There's No Escape flows a little weirdly. Other than that, though, these are some fucking stellar vocals from Lady and Tiggs. I was genuinely shocked when I found out this track didn't have Casey Lee Williams on it. That's how well they capture the feel of some of my favourite tracks from RWBY. Still can't speak for the Attack on Titan end there though. The instrumental's also great, sounding intense, dramatic and actiony. Coupled with the vocals, you have something that complements the otherwise dire battle so well. I like how it changed when Mikasa becomes a Beyblade in that one shot where they forgot to remove the frame counter. The brief pause before the episode's season 8 shot with the silhouettes is fantastic. And as much shit as I give the death, I think the music is the one part of the whole scene that I unironically really like. It doesn't stop outright, but it gets a lot quieter as you wait for the moment where Blake pulls the pin on the Thunder Spear. I wish I could say this track was the one thing that makes Blake vs. Mikasa worth rewatching for me, but it just isn't. Not that it isn't good enough for me to go back to it, because I re-listen to it a lot, but I find myself enjoying it a lot more when I just listen to it on its own. When I rewatch the battle, I can usually only hear one of the two vocalists when they're singing at the same time, and there are some really sick bits of the instrumental that I just miss completely. I can't tell if that's because of the way the sound editing's done or because I'm distracted by, well, a lot of things really. Honestly, I might just like this track more than any of the ones from Season 7, and considering that season gave us Ikari, Blood Gulch Bedlam, What's Up Danger, Lost Ice Storms and so on, that speaks volumes for how much I love Thundershroud. And it speaks even more of the quality of this season's music since this is only number 3. I wish a track this good was put on an episode I liked more, but that doesn't make the track worse. It just makes an episode I dislike a lot less bad in my eyes. So what more could I really ask from it than that? Man, I wish Kings of Iron was longer. As it is, it's not even reaching the 3-minute mark. And a good chunk of the ending is just it kind of petering out after Geese gets stabbed on the rock, before that one last note where Heihachi punches the drone camera. But that is not nearly enough to stop this track from being one of my favourites of all time. It has an amazing retro sound to it thanks to the excellent techno beat. It's easily the catchiest track of the season for me solely thanks to that. I love it so much. I also like how it reflects the pace of the battle, starting out slower but then the tempo really picks up after Heihachi's predictable line. The faster bit is my favourite part of the whole track. It's what helps this episode's Season 8 shot stand out as much as it does to me. I do not think it would be my favourite shot of the fight if not for this incredible music. We have a moment of rest as Heihachi and Geese catch their breaths, and then the rest of the climax dials down the speed, which I think works. They're both worn out, they're both on their last legs, and I think the slower speed just makes it more intense, like we're preparing for the end of the battle. I can't sing the praises of this track enough. The entire team behind the episode was clearly passionate about old school fighting games. I know that much from talking to DJ Tiki firsthand, and this track is the greatest example of that.
Yoda vs King Mickey is a great episode and easily amongst the best season premieres we've ever gotten.
You could have fooled me!
If you thought this video existed for any reason other than for me to continue my crusade of hyping up Yoda vs Mickey as the second, third, and fourth comings of Christ all at the same time, then I don't even know what to tell you. Hearts of Light is just... wow. This might be my favourite instrumental track in Death Battle, period. I go back and forth between this and Watch Out Samurai for that top spot. Regardless of which I prefer, this track is just something else entirely, man. I haven't played any Kingdom Hearts games, so I can't really identify any musical cues from those, but I do really like the Star Wars films, and their music especially is something that typically sticks with me in most of their movies. And this is everything I could have possibly wanted in a Star Wars Death Battle track. Force and Lightning back in Obi-Wan vs Kakashi was great, but this right here is the whole package. The prequel era of Star Wars has my favourite music in the entire series, even beating out the original trilogy despite them having certain individual tracks that outshine anything in the prequels. And Hearts of Light chooses to go down that route with a more operatic sound that Force and Lightning just didn't have. The opening sets the atmosphere flawlessly, and the rest of the battle has this great sounding score which I could totally see accompanying a lightsaber duel in an actual Star Wars movie. Actually, yeah, while I'm on that topic, this is like Dragons and Dumplings in the sense that it just feels like something straight out of a movie score. Fitting since they're the only two tracks of this season to accompany a fight with a movie character. But unlike Dragons and Dumplings, Hearts of Light doesn't have any of these weird pauses or tonal shifts that make it a bit weird to listen to on its own. And then there's the ending, something I am genuinely incapable of re-listening to without getting chills. This ending is flawless. This is what helps this ending stand toe-to-toe with the endings of Tony vs Lex and Snake vs Sam in my eyes. The music is what really sold those endings for me, and Hearts of Light is the closest that any custom track has gotten to matching the emotional impact of Divine Identity or MKAliZ. Mighty got close with that incredible guitar riff for the Night Guy transformation, and while I still prefer that as an overall track to Hearts of Light, the latter has the ending that sticks with me the most. It feels climactic, it feels triumphant for Mickey turning the fight around, it's just incredible. I don't know how else to describe it. This isn't the same earworm that Thundershroud and Kings of Iron have been to me, it doesn't get stuck in my head nearly as often, but man, in terms of emotional impact and getting me to envision the fight again in my mind, nothing else this season even comes close. Every time I re-listen to it, I can almost hear the I can try interaction as if it was my first time watching it again. I can't gush over it enough, except I should probably wrap it up here, so I guess I can. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me talk about my garbage taste in music. This is semi-new territory for me to do a video on. Maybe I'll do one on the full season's OST when the finale comes out. Maybe I'll do this for previous seasons if people want that. Or maybe I'll do my own version of Nem's lyrical track ranking. If that's something you want to see, then let me know in the comments, I guess. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Be sure to go watch Nem's video on these tracks as well. I'll see you in the next one.